Hey, Michelle, what are we doing today?
Hey, Mattie. So there was an article published a few days ago, got picked up by Yahoo and MSN, outlining some red flags that can trip up your college application and how to avoid them. So today we're going to cover those 5 big red flags admissions officers look for. And more importantly, I think we're going to hear from you about how students can address them in their application.
All right, let's check them out.
So I thought it was a really good time to kind of discuss these red flags, and timely that this article came out because students have submitted their early decision applications, and those those results are coming out today and the next few days and the next week. And yes, some are going to be happy that they were accepted, but there's going to be a lot of students who are not accepted. They've got to pivot. They might need to put in regular decision applications. So looking for these red flags in their application could mean the difference between getting accepted or not. I also think for sophomores and juniors, this is going to be really interesting for them to learn as well, these red flags, because they can actually get in front of this and mitigate these red flags before they actually become an issue. So first one that college admissions officers are looking for is lack of course rigor.
Yeah, so landmines, I call them landmines, honestly. That's the term I use more often than red flags. Although I do also use the term yellow flags, which is something completely different. But,
Okay.
a yellow flag is something that's not necessarily bad. Like shyness is a perfect example. You write about being shy. I call that a yellow flag because it's not like a disaster. It's not why, but also you probably shouldn't do. I don't know. It's like not a great idea. It's.
Right.
I had someone who listened to my FLL episode, and the line that stuck out to them is like, "This is a process. Like getting into college is a process of knowing what not to do correctly or what to do, as opposed to like just always nailing it."
Right.
Um, so yes, course rigor. I'm not going to say that it's not true. It's absolutely true that in order to get into top schools, you need to have an extensive course rigor. However, I've been in this industry for 5 years now, 6 years, but 5 years, it's kind of the top level. I am yet to meet the student who has a 4.0, but in remedial classes.
That's a good point.
That student might exist. It would be fascinating for someone to come with a 1550 and a 4.0 and like leads a bunch of stuff and I don't know, but also like, nah, I didn't take calc. I never got around to calculus.
Right.
This is me kind of maybe a weakness in my like counseling game is I think like school classes are kind of boring, so I like don't really look into them. I give students the benefit of the doubt usually that they are taking, as I say, like the classes that the other kids who want to go to Harvard are taking.
Mhm.
That is, and often people kind of, even students like don't like that advice. Like it's kind of like it's too simple. But part of the reason I don't super metagame and overconsider stats in classes is that because there is no way to game it. It is like pretty obvious and so and evident, like apparent to the point that the one time I've read about like lack of rigor where it really affected someone, it was someone who I very much respect her opinion. I was reading about, she was working at U Chicago, and she says like, well, there was a student who wanted to do like advanced, my cat's here, advanced calculus, like applying for like advanced math, but they hadn't taken Calc BC.
Right.
And I read that and I went, yeah, that would be a problem. I also would let them into the University of Chicago for advanced math. Yeah, if you think there's a problem, there probably is. However, if you're not sure if there's a problem, it's probably not. Maybe that's the way I can describe it. Where 9 times out of 10, when a student comes to me being like, I have this class kerfuffle, I stare at it and I go like, I don't think it matters very much. Like, should I take? I want to be applying. I'm going to be applying pre-med. Is it really important I take advanced AP Bio as a sophomore or a freshman? And it's like,
Right.
no, you kind of take it whenever. It's I guess like I might be the wrong guy to like. I'm sure there's another consultant to be like, no, you have to do it exactly this way. But that over and over and over again, like I care about unweighted GPA. Like that is, and I think at some point we're gonna do a stats episode and we talk about it more. But yes, like if you are, so shortest way is like if you should be whatever major you're applying, back up your major and all that. You should be taking the most advanced classes possible as related to that major specifically. So if you're applying liberal arts, yes, you want to be in your your AP histories, your AP lits, your AP, et cetera, and maybe a couple AP sciences just to show you can. If you're applying computer science, you want to be in AP math, AP CS, like on and on and on. But it actually leads to the joke where I ask students like, did you take Calc BC?
Right.
And they say yes. And I go, great, your stats are going to be like, you're all set then, because there is no student who takes Calc BC and gets an A in it that has not done everything else they need to do. That's often like the marker for me. And if you are that student, if you are the 4.0 who wakes up and goes like, oh, I only took like intro to math classes. Right, and if that is you, you want to fix that, like Calc BC is the one that always comes up. It's the hard one, and I think actually reading the article is like, are there ways to make it up? Yeah, is something that could be like advice you could use, TikTok cam kind of thing is if you have not taken these schools don't care when you take these classes. That's very important. It could be as an eighth grader, honestly. It could be a night like so any scenario where you're like, should I take what year should I take this? I don't. It doesn't matter. By the time you submit your application, hopefully, but even then, if you plan to take it, you'll probably get more credit than you expect. But that's very important for me is that I don't care really when or even how you take these more advanced courses.
Right.
It is simply a matter that you get them done, preferably by the time you're actually applying to these schools. That's what you want to be doing.
And okay, so let's say they're putting in their regular decision applications now. They can't really like take Calc BC in the next couple of weeks. How should they, if they have something that they think is a red flag, how should they address it now in their application?
I think what's going to be more likely is if they screwed up Calc BC, if they have a C plus in it, or something like that. That's a tough situation, and that one I do handle gingerly. On the application, there's something referred to the additional information box. It comes at the end. We should do an episode on it entirely because it's a really interesting aspect. I've had we both worked on it extensively. It's like one of the rare areas we both really like go at in different ways. And when it comes to stats, yeah, like without like excuses are not a good idea. However, like the situation is often that they have a really good GPA and they have they screwed up Calc BC and there's always a story and I believe a story. Don't tell that story if it doesn't if the teacher's like if everyone did poorly and all that stuff, like I don't know. It often works better if you remedy the situation. If you went and took a college class or you went and you self studied and got a 5 on the AP anyways. That really helps for younger students is if you can even if it's not technically on your transcript, you can't put it there. If you go to you take it again, essentially in another format and get an A on at that time, that is a much better way to remedy such a situation. Because then in your additional information, you can know it's like, yeah, like whatever the situation was, usually it's like it was more difficult than anticipated, or don't blame the teacher, don't get all cynical. But yeah, it's like it was more, yeah, likely it's like the work was more difficult than I expected, and I wasn't able to keep up. And then I was like, I was disappointed, yes, for my GPA, but also because I care about the subject and I want to showcase that I mastered it before I move on to the next level. That's why I went and did this, and this, and I was very proud to get these results. And then you say it's like I'm highly confident that I will now be ready to take on a more advanced course on college.
Right.
And I can roll that off because I've had so many random people email me with that question, and that's basically I've memorized the response.
So the second one then is lack of extracurricular engagement. So admissions officers looking for like what kind of contribution are you making to your school or community, and maybe you just don't have the goods in your application.
Yeah, I mean it's a red flag. So this one's tough because it's this one definitely is going to scale depending on what school you're going to. Is
right.
In an upcoming episode, I think this is one we'll be talking about the most in an upcoming episode we're doing. I'm talking about a girl who applied to top schools and didn't work out, and her red flag. Looking at her application already, like a lot of it was their extracurricular activity.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I don't know if there's a quick fix because I guess if you're sitting here, you're a sophomore, you're a junior, and you're like panicking, it's like, what do I do? Don't add just a bunch of random stuff.
Right.
Like, that is not the quick fix. You don't go join 8 clubs. Don't do that. Instead, consider your application as a whole and what you've been achieving and how can you. It's about building up, not wide. Is always going to be my theory. Is like go back and listen to the back up your major episode. Honestly, and you can link that, Charlene, because that one is really relevant, I think, for younger students as well. And consider like what you want to be doing. Figure out what you're currently doing that matches that, and like how can you be doing more? It's about dedicated effort, but also achievement. Honestly, it's about using what you've learned to continue building upwards in that regard, and leading to awards and completed projects and actual users and actual benefit to society in your school. That is the type of stuff that is going to be rewarded much more than being like, I gotta go do a bunch of random stuff. Like it is about stay calm is I guess my advice for this one, because it's very tempting to just sign up for a bunch of random crap and then burn yourself out. That's not the strategy. You have to continue on the path you're doing because that's what you need when you actually apply.
And a senior who's thinking like, okay, what am I supposed to do now with these applications I'm going to put in? Is there anything that they can do, or should they think back to maybe like, is there a part-time job that I had or family responsibilities I can put in there? And
yeah, it's I'm the essay coach, you're the EC coach kind of thing. Is there's definitely a benefit if if I honestly, if a student could only get like 1 hour session, it would probably be with you, like doing their EC list. Like that would probably be the single biggest benefit that they could get in their application, is that there's a lot of there's a lot of dark consultant witchcraft I'm sure you pulled off,
Yeah.
like me, like because the same weakness of the EC is that there's so little space they provide you. Also, is in of itself a bit of like an exploitable situation because like a really creative, let's say, like resume builder, like yourself and me, when I really want when I was into it, like there's a lot you could do with. Somewhat like I guess mundane is probably the right
Right.
word I'd use. Is you can play them up in a way that's more interesting. And similarly, working with me is a lot of heavy lifting in the essays is to make what may be considered a mundane or regular extracurricular make it seem more extraordinary. That within the actual application, like that's a big part of what the essays and the application itself is for, is to like really to explain what you've done and why it matters. And with the right help, that can go a long way towards kind of boosting the value of what you've done.
Yeah, because I would be like grilling these students, like, are you sure you haven't had any type of job, or like, what are your hobbies? And we would try to find something in there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, if you're sitting there with only three things, I guess it's there's a scenario though where it's like if you haven't done anything, the good news is like, and this is actually important, is if you haven't like done that much, you're probably not qualified to get into like your most elite schools in America. Like unfortunately, that's just kind of how it works. They have to judge on something. The good news is if you still have your 4L, you took your Calc BC. This is going to come in the stats episode, but you're still going to get into like a ton of schools because it's a little it's a bit strange, but like ECs only really matter. Like I really only start to matter around your top 20 range. They just
That's a good point.
is very much my belief that up to around NYU is always kind of my breakneck where the average GPA becomes like a 3.9 and the average SD becomes a 1500. Before then is just having higher raw stats and higher test scores than the average is what gets you into the school. So it's not that big a deal if you're, normal or like or if you're kind of like scattered, like all that stuff those red flags don't really matter if you have the grades. That's why red flag 1 is what I'm like actually a real red flag.
Right, right.
So again, we're talking at the top level here, and it's kind of almost like you fall into like I don't know what to tell you at that level. It's like if you haven't achieved at a high level, you haven't accomplished a lot of things, you're just going to lose out probably to students who have. And I don't know if that's a red flag. I think that's just the system working correctly, unfortunately. But yes, there are ways. Yeah, earlier on you want to build up, and even at the time, there like part of what we do is to make students sound as awesome as possible, to make them sound as spectacular as possible, and that scales to every single level of involvement. So even at the lower end, there are definitely students that on paper and when we've seen it have not been that impressive, and by the end they sound like pretty darn cool at least. So
Right, right. And the next red flag then is kind of related, and it's unrelated because it's unrelated extracurriculars. So it is having extracurriculars, but they don't necessarily like align with what you want to major in or your future goals.
in this is not a death sentence. I know it almost sounds wrong considering I was like back up your major, back up your major. The episode that's already doing the best, go watch that one. That's fine, like I do not. You want a little. Long time ago, I had it's actually on my screen shapes. My screen wallpaper is like a little starfish, and he has like one little arm with a wand, and he has a tiny little half arm. And the idea is that like yes, your major should be the focus of your application, and that is a real red flag. If you are applying computer science and I don't have a computer science background, you need to either get on that or consider not applying computer science, kind of thing. It's like I really strongly believe that.
Right.
But if you like, yes, it's actually not a bad thing if you have the little tiny arm. In this case, is whatever else you like to do, and often that can be if that's tangentially related to your major, that's fine. But if not, that's also cool. Is like part of this process is figuring out what students are into, and then honestly, really hammering them on the major stuff. Both of us do. We both really come to understand that.
Yeah.
But then getting to figure out everything else they do, sometimes it's just like neat, but also a lot of essays involve that stuff. Often it's about combining it as well. Yeah, I'm thinking about like a lot of the essays this year. It's not always just like major, 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 and stuff like that. It's
Hmm.
what you don't want to do though is be following that stuff thinking it's like good to get you into college. Maybe that's the difference. Is that we get students once they've already built all this stuff, and I'm cool with it and make it work when they're also into hiking, they're also into literature or what have you, and
Right.
yeah, they're also into reading books. That may or may not come up depending on how really into it they seem to be and how interesting I find their engagement with it. But it really is kind of seasoning or kind of it's like wrapping around the core of what we're trying to do. So do not like think like You can put that in your application. You can put that you work at the library or whatever, even though you're applying math. That's fine. And you can even like you can either write or encompass it into an essay if it's topical. It's much more like that itself is not a red flag as long as you have everything else. It's much more. I would not consider doubling down on the stuff that is not related to your major, especially if you're worried about having the right stuff.
Right. And if you're a sophomore and junior, you have time to like kind of realign your extracurriculars to align more with like your major.
Yeah, it's also I often call it the X of Y. This is something I do. It's a little cheat I do for essays. It can also just work for extracurricular stuff. Is that the X is your future major, so it's computer science, and the Y is whatever you want to be doing or writing about. So
Mhm.
let's say you are on the golf team. Well, you're a computer scientist. Okay, how can you use computer science to get better at golf? And
Right.
it often sounds like kind of silly or facetious, but it's like I don't know, go pro like CS does everything. Like that's CS. It's often for CS because it does everything. It's like make a program that tracks how far you hit the ball. I don't know. Like
Exactly.
yeah, and then and you have to actually go do it. Or I can think of another. I guarantee another CS to golf strategy. It's like use it make a robot that like scans your ball for imperfections so you can yeah like I don't care do whatever you want to do. But that's often if you really want to like be like Mattie, Hardo, college admission stuff. That's what I recommend to real students who come talk to me is be applying your future major to the activities you already do. Because I it may seem kind of silly at the time, but when students do it, and I kind of push them to, they come back to me and we write a really cool essay about it because it is cool that you wrote a machine to track your backswing to fix it,
Yeah.
and that's how you become like the golfer. Like oh, this golf computer scientist gets it, like
Exactly.
yeah, it's that that's my best advice. Yeah, but it's not a red flag in of itself if there isn't that connection. That's the key.
Okay, so the next one is an inappropriate social media presence. And I thought this was interesting that more than 2/3 of admissions officers believe it's fair game to check out applicants' social media.
I believe it's fair game, certainly.
Do they look at their social media, students?
Well, let me put it this way, Michelle. That's what I always say. I've had 3 students in 5 years. I've had 3 students who all had the exact same name. And I don't want to dox them, but the last name was Chen. All right, so it's not really a doxing situation now, is it? I was. If they want to find you, they gotta find
Right.
you. And it's actually inherently a bit racist, like kind of to assume that these people. The nature of college admissions is that there's a lot of people who have the same name, especially from basically like certain demographics that have like much more similar last names.
Yeah.
And in order to go get you, they would need to. Well, first they would need to be spending any amount of time whatsoever in their very, very busy schedule where they already have to do 600 applications today,
Yes.
and it's 4 a.m. in their kitchen. That's going to be a lot. It's a lot of extra effort to like go like search find your Insta and like look at stuff, and they're usually not going to. It's also that, and I give students the benefit of the doubt. Yes, don't put
Yeah.
stupid shit on your social media. It's like I'm a millennial. I'm from the era where we did, and we mostly got away with it. But I give students in this era enough credit that they know that's not a good idea. What can happen, and this is probably what you can worry about, is there are like narcs, there are snakes in this process,
Oh,
and what
yes.
can happen is if they are say competing with you for a top school and they're a snake, they can find something on your social media and they can package that stuff up and send it like, oh my god, you have to look at this Purdue or Princeton or whatever.
Ooh, that's nefarious, but I bet it
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, yeah. Like that's the warning I give students, and that's much more believable than some random dude who's being paid like $50 an hour is going to be like hitting up the search bar looking for you. Like they don't care. As I mentioned last episode, like yes, they will sometimes, very rarely, like fact check the work you've done. Like that involves like calling up the people you worked under or like that, trying to make sure that's real.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, like the snake in the grass student that you never see coming, who you may not even know, like that's the kid you worry about, and that's a fair warning. That is a fair red flag.
Yeah.
That kid will put you on blast because he's a narc, and they will check that out, And if it is bad, that will be a problem. So don't do it. Yeah, but I give students the benefit of the doubt. I'm not the one making sure they haven't put anything hateful on their TikTok or whatever. I just
And the last one is just like an unpolished and unprofessional essay. I mean, not every student has a Mattie to help them through the essay process. So, like, what can they do to check over their essays? I mean, we're talking about just like grammar or tone, just like some basic things.
I read it from some other consultant, but is like the seam show is a line I read and I think about a lot. And this one's tough for me because yes, I would say the essays that our students go out are polished. That's one
Hmm.
word for it. However, they're also good. They're also interesting and engaging and talk about the student.
Yeah.
Polished is only one aspect of the essay quality. And it does matter. I think it actually probably matters more than it should, because that's what I read over and over again when I read essays that work. Is polished is one of the words that come to mind. And that is, I think, what you get with maybe a different type of consultant who is a very good like copy editor, maybe, but and it's certainly going to give you time and effort. You end up with a polished essay that is teed off. And I think it matters more than it probably should that your essay is polished, because that seems to be part of the secret handshake of these top schools,
Interesting.
that the essay is at
Yeah.
least extremely, it doesn't even have to be good or like make that much. It has to make enough sense and has to be safe. Safe and polished are the words I often say. I often think when I'm reading other students' essays that worked. And well, that is important. Like, and I think if you want to get into a top 20 school, whether you have support or not, you should at least have a polished essay. It should be grammatically correct. It should be spell checked, certainly. Um, that's the kind of stuff that if I were an admissions reader and there were grammatical mistakes, I would pretty quickly throw the application in the trash. But I guess that's just me, because that's how I view writing, is like, if you don't, if it's not spelled right, then it's like, what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, there's that is the type of thing where bugging people can be helpful, because it's one of the easier issues to remedy, is that there are a lot more people who are able and willing to help you like polish an essay and make sure that the grammar is correct, and there are people who can help you with structure or syntax or style, and definitely more they can tell you like, is this a good essay to get you into elite universities? It's like different levels of support. So the lack of polish is the one that I do believe that there's support out for you. That's often like the bugging your English teacher kind of thing. I actually think you should bug your English teacher and really bug them, because they will do it eventually, if you bug them up. And that is something they absolutely, your average English teacher in America can polish up an essay just fine in an hour or 45 minutes. So I really believe that if you are not certain of your own ability to copy edit content, it's like that is where you should get support, because even someone doing it for free who may not necessarily want to will still
Right.
give it to your English teacher, make them look at it, because it's a fellow writer or fellow literature lover. They're gonna intuitively go and they'll have to fix the grammar and syntax, because they can't not, because it's a piece of writing that they're looking at. So yes, and that is a problem. Like
Yeah.
spelling mistakes are a big red flag. You cannot have that. Broken grammar is a red flag, especially when you have a high. You took the SAT, you have a high. I suspect that if you have you take the SAT and you get like 800 grammar or whatever, and then you have grammatical and syntax errors.
Exactly.
That's a different type of red flag, because now the writing isn't matching the belief that you have mastered English literature, and that leads to a completely different problem where they assume that you're getting your like something's up. And that's like that's kind of my version of red flags, or more that I call like it's an alarm, like an AO alarm. There's a lot of different things. Maybe a sequel to this, like my red flags, things I think about that. This list is a lot more straightforward, I guess.
Yeah.
Big one where anything doesn't quite match up what other things on the application are saying, that it lacks that cohesion. That sets off a flag of like, what's going on here, which can lead, if nothing else, leads to them wondering what's going on here, instead of, is this a good student? Do I want them at the school? So you don't want that one bit.
Right. Yeah. So my last question then is just like, for you, giving out advice like to seniors right now, trying to strengthen their regular decision application, other than like what we talked about, is there anything else that you would recommend that they look for in their application, just to?
Yeah, this will be going out right near the submission timeline, so it's coming in hot. Yeah, the spelling and grammar stuff does matter. Make sure you have all the right school names.
Oh, that's a good one.
Here's one I can mention is students. It is easy when you have applied to like 15, 20 schools at this point, over and over and over and over again. It is very easy to mistakenly believe that you have gotten everything out about yourself, that you have shared all your dreams and aspirations and everything, and it's like you did a good job. But please consider that schools only receive the supplements that you are sending them for their school. And what that means is go through all your supplements and look through them and try to realize that they're just getting that and your personal statement, and see what kind of person you are through that lens. Because what can happen is you think you're sending all these, they all read all of it. They don't. You only get that supplement and that personal statement. And if you come off not the way you want, consider moving some essays around so that it's a better representation of what you want to actually be saying. Because that is something I personally am always playing defense against. And yeah, you end up being like, you're like a sensitive poet at NYU, but then you're like a go-getter,
Right.
go-getter. And that could be okay. If that's what you want to send, that's okay. But that's the one thing you can look for, is to find that cohesion, make sure it's you are the right version of you is being sent to all these different schools. That's what I recommend.
Awesome. Well, hopefully this will help the seniors getting ready for those regular decision applications. So look out for those red flags and try to strengthen up your application.
Thank you, Michelle. See you next time.
See ya.
Thank you for watching College with Mattie. For more information or a coaching session with Mattie, visit collegewithmattie.com. You can follow College with Mattie on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Tune in next week for more episodes, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.